Good morning, everybody. It's Positive Tuesday today, February 7th, 2023. We are live streaming today on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel. So however you are watching, thank you for joining us. Filling in for Fitzy today is friend of the show, businessman and attorney Adam Jarchow. By the way, if you're easily offended, you may want to just turn this off now because we literally have nothing written down. We were just talking right before we went live. What are we talking about? I don't know. I thought you had something. So we don't know what we're talking about, so it's going to be dangerous. So I just want to pre-warn everybody right now. But first, for Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald, who of course is off today, I'm Ben Dryden, and you're watching Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy, presented by Professional Exteriors and Interiors. With nearly 20 years of experience, this locally owned and operated business has provided quality work both on the inside and on the outside of your home or business. Like Fitzy and I, they believe that it's the little things that make a big difference. So give them a call today. The number's right there on the screen, 715-520-2271. Adam, good morning, sir.
What's happening?
How are you?
Every day's a day in paradise, buddy. How are you?
See, now when you say it that way, I feel like you don't mean it.
Well, some days I mean it and some days I don't, right?
Do you mean it today? Is
you
today
start the day with a positive attitude and it's going to be a good day because it's Positive Tuesday.
That's right. Amen to that. I love it. It's been a while since you've been on and chatted. How are things going? We always like to start our shows with something positive. That's the one thing I do know that we'll talk about today. Something positive. So give us something positive going on in your life.
I have put almost 2,000 miles on my snowmobile this winter because we have had an awesome snowmobile season. The trails have been fantastic, and I'm not campaigning for anything, so I get to ride snowmobile.
Well, the year's early yet. And oh, shoot, that's a good one. I've heard tell some rumor mill in Polk County that I don't know if you're running for anything, but you may be taking on a different job. Is that something we could talk about? Or a different title?
No, I don't know what you're talking about. Never heard of it. Where's Polk County? I've never even heard of that.
Okay, we'll skip that one.
What? Huh?
But it's not, I don't think it's an elected position, so you're right. You're technically not running. That is positive.
It is. Yeah.
How long did it take? So you announced that you were running for Attorney General. I think you made your decision sometime in December, and then you I think officially announced sometime in January. And then you hit it hard for, up until the primary. I mean, you were gone all the time. How many miles did you put on your vehicle in those, 5 months, 6 months?
A lot. Yeah, over 40,000. It was a lot of driving.
Right. So how long did it take you to decompress that? So you lose, Eric Toney wins the primary, and now what?
I don't know if it was so much decompressing as it was being sort of, okay, this is done, and now I have a business that I have to run and a law firm that I have to run and family that I have to, reconnect with and spend some time with. And so we've spent a lot of time doing that with the family, and I have done a fair amount of traveling since that primary got over. And, I've spent a lot of time working in the businesses and the law firm. And so I don't think it was decompress. It was just getting back into the groove of doing what you do in real life as opposed to the fake world of politics and campaigns.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, because they just know you as a person that seems to just run for offices all the time. What else do? You are an attorney, and I want to get into that in a minute, actually, because we can find out what's under your umbrella. Do you do trial stuff, whatever? But what are you a part of? Because I know that Barb, your wife, I think some businesses, it's I don't know if they're called her businesses or they're under her name, whatever. But between you and your wife, Barb, what else do you do outside from being attorney?
Yeah, we own a campground with a bar on it, a seasonal campground called the DN Campground over by Balsam Lake, and we own a safety business called Industrial Safety that sells and services safety equipment and fire equipment. And I practice law, and the most important thing is we raise kids. We have 10-year-old twins that are they're on the run constantly. I was at karate last night with the boy, and Barb was at the spring softball meeting with the girl, and that's on the heels of being at basketball on Saturday with them, and it's just never ends.
The boy. I like that. With the boy. Yeah. She's with the girl. Which are the DN Campground, Industrial Safety, and being an attorney? If you had to pick one of those and it would provide financially for the rest of your life, which one would you take?
Oh, the campground. I mean, it's got a bar. Come on.
Well, duh.
Come on. I
Right.
mean, come on.
Yeah, that's kind of a no-brainer. That's a stupid question. Now I think about it. That's why I should prepare for these things. So, as I stated at the very beginning, we literally didn't have anything written down or like an agenda item. Usually, I always like to have just a few like topics or something. So, if anyone has a topic they want us to discuss, fine. But what do you want to talk about?
I don't know. Should we talk about you? You always want to talk about
No.
other people. Why don't we talk about
Well,
you?
that's
How's
kind
the
of my
show going?
job, and I love that. I like asking people about them. I like learning about them. Now, I know a
I
decent
want to
amount
learn.
about you, so I
I
don't
want to
know.
learn about you. Yeah, let's learn about you.
What do you want to know?
Well, I don't know.
No comment.
I know too
There you
much
go.
about. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Finally. In your run for AG, did you learn anything about politics that surprised you? Great question.
That is a good
No
question.
kidding. He should
You
have done these
know,
shows.
it was the first time, of course, that I had done a statewide campaign, and I learned that it is very, very difficult to try to do a statewide campaign from northwestern Wisconsin. We all know that the population center of our state is in southeastern Wisconsin in the Milwaukee suburbs, Madison, Milwaukee suburbs, in that area. And it is also where the vast majority of Republican primary votes come from. So if you're going to run a statewide campaign, particularly as a Republican, you essentially have to live in southeastern Wisconsin. And as a dad and small business owner, that's very, very difficult. So probably the hardest part of the campaign for me was trying to balance being at home and still trying to run businesses in a law firm with being in southeastern Wisconsin. So it was a lot of drive down there, do events, and drive back the same night. I mean, there was a lot of days that you leave at 4 or 5 in the morning and you're not back till midnight. And it's a different animal if you're from southeastern Wisconsin. You drive half an hour to an event and then drive home, whereas I'm driving 4 or 5 hours to an event and drive home. So if you're going to run a statewide campaign from northwestern Wisconsin, be a pilot is what I learned. Learn how to fly an airplane.
Yeah, get there a lot faster. A lot more quickly.
Yeah,
You had said most primary, you said Republican votes come down. Why?
it's just the population center. So we have in Wisconsin what are called the WOW counties,
Oh,
the
yeah.
three counties that surround Milwaukee, Waukesha, Ozaukee, and Washington County. And those three counties and the Milwaukee media market make up about 80% or so of the Republican primary voters. There was an article in the Journal Sentinel probably a year ago now that kind of broke that down, and that Milwaukee media market, you'd have to have like 60 other counties or something like that to make up for the same number of votes that media market has. It's crazy.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah. Great
So if
question, though.
did you looking back now, and I don't want to get into all this like unpacking because it's been a while now. I mean that's jeepers, almost like 9 months ago this all happened. But is there something that you look back on now and knowing? I mean, it sounds like you already knew this going into it. Like that's where it all is, and you tried to spend as much time down there as you possibly could to kind of put a bow on the race. Is there anything you would have done differently looking back now?
Yeah, I want to run. That's a crazy
Okay.
idea from the outside.
Yeah, if I knew I was going to
Yeah.
lose, then jeepers.
Actually, I think if I knew I was going to win, I probably went to run. It was, it's just far more intense and far more all-encompassing than I had imagined. I guess I was naive going into it, and it was, I had a long time ago decided I wouldn't run for anything, and I should have just stuck to that. And after this was the medicine necessary to cure me from politics. That's for sure.
Sure. So your other industrial safety. How long have you been doing industrial safety?
My dad started that business back in the late '80s, and I bought it from him. It's got to be about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and it's a fun business. I'm a volunteer firefighter, so getting to work with firefighters in that business is really cool. It's always good if you get to make a little money while you're doing something that you like, and that's certainly the case with that business.
Yeah. And your law firm, Jarchow Law, what falls under the umbrella? What cases do you take?
I do mostly transactional work, business transactions, business deals, real estate deals. I'll take on some land use issues and land use disputes, zoning disputes. But most of what I do is outside of the court, and I kind of like it that way. I find the court process and the regulatory process to be all somewhat insane,
What?
and very inefficient, and it doesn't get you to the right result no matter how who.
Screenshot. Pop that on there. Screenshotting. Haha. Yeah, so I don't know if you can, and if you can still hear us, just, sign out, click back in. Hold on 1 second. I think I can actually do that for him. So, there, just booted him. Ha! Getting rid of him. And there he's back. Oh, nope. How about this? There we go.
Did I freeze?
Yeah. So I booted
That's weird. Okay. I have fiber at my house, believe it or not. I can't believe I froze.
I don't know. It's better than Fitzy. He's always like fuzzy. But I've met him in real life, and he looks kind of fuzzy all the time. Especially when he doesn't get his hair cut. All right, so you were talking about the law firm, Jarchow Law, and the system. You find it, what was the word that you used?
I think I find the litigation process and the court system to be inefficient, and you don't come to very good results. Even if you win, you kind of lose because you spent a year or two of your life and a lot of money on attorney's fees. So I like negotiating deals.
Deals. So businesses, I mean, who's the average person? Give us like an average, well, there isn't an average, but your top three things that you tend to, because people will call you, of course. I mean, you're a lawyer. You don't like solicit things. It's just, they call you about something. What are the three most common or frequent requests for you to be an attorney for them?
Well, it's weird. I get a million phone calls a week on things that I don't do, but the things that I do are, in most instances, are business transactions. So if a business is buying another business or selling part of its business or merging with a business or starting a new line or negotiating a contract or has an employment issue with employees or, anything that you can think of inside the business, is acquiring new real estate, opening a new manufacturing facility. There's always things to do in from kind of the contract world. So that's first. Along with that comes a lot of real estate and real estate related deals and land use deals, getting there, helping the businesses navigate the zoning process, which is absurd. I mean, we should really just honestly just get rid of zoning. It is the single stupidest thing that we've ever done to ourselves as a society is allow
So for
these.
people who don't know, I mean, other people, because clearly I know everything about that. What are you talking about? Zoning, isn't that like, this is has to be residential building and this has to be a commercial building? And I'm assuming that's for a reason, must be taxes, but I literally don't know. Is that what you're talking about?
It's not for a reason. It's mostly for bureaucrats to control how you use your land. And I think the theory behind it was good, and maybe at times there's some good things from it. But I've gotten to the point where I've dealt with so many unreasonable zoning people, so many unreasonable zoning administrators, so much unreasonable red tape and bureaucracy when you're just trying to, use your property that if I was king for a day, we'd just eliminate zoning and be done with it.
So that's interesting because as you know, I used to be in our studio back, this is pre-COVID, when I was renting a place, turn it into a studio, and we left, which is why I'm doing this, literally from my dining room since then. But we're trying to find some property in Spooner where I could just buy and then put up a kind of like a garage, pretty much. I'm not going to live in it, so it'd be like a building thing, whatever. But I wanted it as a garage. I know it's weird, but I want like a big, huge front door that comes up, whatever. And then someone told me that, well, no, you can't do that. Not in the city of Spooner, or I could be wrong. This is what somebody told me. That you can't have a garage unless it's attached to a home or this or something else. I'm like, what? What does it matter what I build? If I own the property, it shouldn't matter. I just build what I want to build, right? But I kind of find out that's not accurate.
It's not at all accurate. It's very frustrating, and the rules change, and they're always subject to whatever the zoning bureaucracy decides they just want to do and what they think are important for the day. And keep in mind, if they issue you a citation or a cease and desist, well, it's on you to, either pay that or fight that. And if you're going to fight it, it's really expensive. And we're in a housing crisis. We have been for a long time. And I lay it at the doorstep oftentimes of the zoning bureaucracy. And, part of it is we want to shut the door behind us and not we have our little 5-acre, 10-acre, 40-acre piece of paradise, and we don't want anyone around us. And so we're good with shutting the door behind us. Well, that has serious consequences. If you want to know why housing prices are out of reach, why rent prices are out of reach, it's because we don't have enough housing stock. And the reason we don't have enough housing stock is because it's incredibly expensive to build. there's something like $100,000 per residential house tied up in the permitting bureaucracy.
I remember there was a situation in Shell. I think it's been resolved now, but it was a couple years ago. We had the city administrator on, or I think maybe my mom did in one of her shows, and it was about the old elementary school in Shell Lake. But there was some, I think it was a Wisconsin law. I don't think it's like an ordinance or anything, but something about TIFs, something about it had to be used for a certain percentage of something else. Like, no, but we could sell it as this or do this, and then we want to develop it. Well, no, it was in terms of funding and everything else. It was just kind of a nightmare for quite a while. Mm-hmm. That world, I'm so ignorant on that stuff. I don't know, but I'm starting to realize, at least what I'm hearing from you, is we should be paying attention to that more. How do we pay attention to that stuff? Like, how would I know what's going on?
It's local politics. So it's your county board. It's why who you elect to your county board actually matters. Who you elect to your town board or to your village, your village board or city council. Why those things matter. We don't pay any attention to it. All we care about is who the stinking president is, which has very little impact on our actual day-to-day life. What really matters, the person that really has an impact on your day-to-day life, is the county board and the town board. Did your roads get plowed last time it snowed? Well, that wasn't the president, right? That's the county board. That's the town board.
And your zoning administrators. Are those county or are those city zoning administrators? I don't know.
Both. So the county has its own zoning ordinance. Most counties, we still have a handful in Wisconsin without zoning. Good job to those counties. You should just keep it that way. Your residents will be better off. But in cities, oftentimes there are as well, and they have their own zoning. And believe it or not, some towns have decided to opt out of county zoning, and they have adopted their own zoning ordinance. So
is that good? Would you recommend that, or is it more of a we want to be more micromanaging? Or we just don't believe necessarily in the county, what they want to do. What's good for some lake somewhere is different for what's good for our city or our town. Is this a good thing or a bad thing that they kind of some want to break off?
You entered into kind of a weird area when you talked about lakes, because we have a statewide thing that says the counties all have to adopt a shoreland zoning ordinance. So even if you don't have general zoning in your county, you are required by the state law to have shoreland zoning at the county level, and that supersedes basically in any other zoning ordinance that's out there in the town. The cities and villages are accepted from that, but in the non-cities and villages, you're under county shoreline zoning if you're within so many feet of a river and so many feet of a lake.
Well, okay, so I've never even heard of shoreline zoning. So
what is that? You don't want to get into it.
Give me the broad stroke here. What is shorelines? I mean, if you're next to a shore, it has to be what, commercial or residential or something? What is that?
No, it's not so much that. It's setbacks and what you can build impervious surface and what you can do with the grading and filling and what you can do with boathouses and what you can do with the grass and lawn and brush and trees that are in front of it. We call it a buffer zone.
Who cares? It's your property, isn't it?
It's the king's property, actually, as it turns out. I always thought it was our property too, but the more I learn about this, the more I think we were just at the mercy of the feudal lords at the county zoning office.
Well, I'm going to start looking into that a little bit more. I'm not sure if I want to. It sounds like a really big rabbit hole.
Don't learn about it. Yeah, don't learn about it.
I think I'd get frustrated because I like logic and rational and reasonable outcomes to rational situations. We can all just, okay, this makes sense. Doesn't sound like that's a world that I would enjoy.
It's not a world I particularly enjoy. Yeah, no, you're right.
Hey, speaking of politics, I have Judge Doro on tomorrow. Do you have a pick or a favorite? I'm assuming it's going to be one of the two conservatives. There's two conservatives and two liberals that were running. I think that's on February 21st. Oh, you know what? I bet that's 2 weeks from today. Yeah, Tuesday. 2 weeks from today, there is that primary. Do you have one of the four that you kind of like?
Yeah. I'm a Dan Kelly fan. Dan Kelly is a former Wisconsin Supreme Court justice, was appointed by Governor Walker, and then unfortunately lost a few years ago in a bid to keep the seat. And the circumstances surrounding that election were really odd because we had a Democrat presidential primary on the same day as that election. And so the turnout was overwhelmingly Democrat. We didn't have a Republican contested presidential primary on the same day. So the electorate was very Democrat leaning. Unfortunately, he lost, but he was a spectacular justice. He was there. If you're a conservative, he was there for us on every single issue. And for me, you'll think it's odd, but it boils down to one thing. He was the deciding vote to reopen the businesses that my wife and I own that were illegally closed by Governor Evers during the shutdown order. Dan Kelly stood with us shoulder to shoulder, and I will be forever thankful to him for doing that. And that's not to say anything negative about Judge Doro. I'm sure that she would be just fine. And if she prevails on February 21st, I will support her, because literally every single reform that was done during the Walker era is on the line. We have, about 3.5 liberals on the court and 3.5 conservatives. It just depends on what day of the week it is for Brian Hagedorn, whether he's going to be a liberal or a conservative that day.
Yeah.
And so if we lose this seat, which is currently held by one of the conservatives, it will be a solidly liberal court. We've seen what those courts have done around the country. The two liberal candidates have said that they will that they view the job essentially as super legislators. If you look at what they have said they will do, they believe that their job as a judge is to, basically overturn whatever policy they don't like. Well, that's not the job of a judge. A judge is to look at the law and the Constitution, and they think whatever policy they don't like, they're going to strike down. So all of those Walker era reforms will be at risk. Act 10 will be at risk. Right to work will be at risk. Prevailing wage reforms will be at risk. Everything that you can think of that was done during that era, the Second Amendment rights will be at risk. I guarantee you, guaranteed.
All right,
I'll come back. If we lose this race, you write this down. Yeah. I guarantee you that this court, if we lose this race to one of the liberals, will find a constitutional right in the Wisconsin Constitution for unlimited, unfettered abortion. That will happen by this court. And we will be just like Minnesota and Illinois on so many issues, including that one. It will be a disaster for Wisconsin if we lose this April election.
Well, I don't really understand. So when you say we, you're referring to Republicans. And I've had Dan on before, Justice Kelly on before, and he'll actually be on a week from tomorrow, coming on for a second time. And we had Eric, probably shouldn't say that name out loud. We had Eric Toney on a couple of weeks ago on the show. Sorry, buddy. Yeah, and I don't understand that, because wherever you stand, or whatever views or opinions that I have on any of the topics that you just discussed or mentioned, it should be irrelevant when it comes to the judge. I literally don't get it. I must be missing something, because I don't get how you just don't be a judge. Just do that. You have one job. Just do it. Because that's your job. Let legislators legislate and let everybody do their jobs. Your job is to, what is brought before us, and is this constitutional? Does this follow the law? Yes or no? It should be, I don't want to say simple. I'm not trying to simplify the job, and certainly not the importance of it. But I don't understand how, when there's a 4-3 vote, 3 people vote against something. Mm-hmm. That's so weird to me. I know I get there's a little nuance there, or maybe quite a bit of nuance in terms of interpretation. I do Bible studies all the time. I could read one part and try to understand the context that Paul was talking to the Roman church. Okay, I get it. But you could read the same thing and have a slightly different version, but we still come to the same, conclusion as to what this is. I don't understand. And I'm told from Republicans that it's only the liberals that want to, or that kind of legislate from the bench. But and they never say that any Republicans do. I've always known you to be very inaccurate and being very honest, and that usually hurts you in elections when you say these things on our show, so don't ever run for anything again. Is that true? Is this mostly Republicans? And if so, why?
It's just the opposite. It's mostly liberals that legislate from the bench, in my experience.
Oh, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. Yes. It's mostly liberals. Now, granted, it's coming from a Republican, but why is that?
So, in my opinion, the sort of conservative judicial philosophy, which was pretty nicely laid out by now deceased Justice Antonin Scalia, is tied to two things: textualism and originalism. So the textualism is you just look at what the statute says, or what the Constitution says, and you don't put your own spin on it, what you think it was supposed to mean, and you don't try to stand in the
I like
shoes
that.
of
I
James
thought that's what.
Madison.
Love it. Right there. Done.
You just read it and say, well, this is what it says.
Yep.
So this is what I think it means. Now, sometimes there's some ambiguity, right? If you've ever read a statute or a provision in our Constitution, you might say, well, there's some ambiguity there. I'm not exactly sure what that means. And so sort of the fallback to that and the conservative judicial philosophy is originalism. So you try to discern what the original meaning of that was to be. What was the original meaning of the First Amendment? Because obviously the First Amendment, for example, was drafted long before we had Twitter and Facebook. So how do you apply the First Amendment to modern technology? And what was in the mind of the people that drafted the First Amendment of that language when they drafted it, and how would you apply that? My opinion, again, is that liberals think, well, I just feel like we should be able to have strip clubs. Okay, well, so we're going to write that. That's what the First Amendment means. That's expressive, whatever. And so now it's protected First Amendment speech to be a naked dancer on a stage somewhere, right? That it's a different way of looking at it. And liberals think that we should be able to ban guns. So they read the Second Amendment, where I read, shall not infringe. They read something completely different, that, well, you can infringe if we really don't like that gun. So I think it's just a significant difference in outcome. And you will see conservative judges a lot of times come to answers they don't like from a policy perspective. So you saw Justice Scalia vote to allow flag burning. Do you think he liked flag burning? No,
sure,
he said he didn't like flag burning, but he said, I think that's protected First Amendment speech. I don't find liberals very often on the other side of the policy outcome that you would expect from them. I'm waiting still for the liberal judge who will say, no, your gun rights are protected under the Second Amendment. You just never see that. And that's why I'm so fearful for this April election, that if we lose this election, there will be litigants at the courthouse door on every single one of the reforms that was passed during the 8 years of Governor Walker to strike down those reforms.
All right, they have a question here. We have another one. I want to go back to shoreline zoning here, but here's from Kevin. How many candidates can we vote for in the primary? Because the top two move on. Obviously, it's probably not going to be two conservatives or two liberals. It's likely to be one or the other. How many can they vote for?
One.
There you go.
Dan Kelly.
You can only vote for Dan Kelly. Circling back here, Chuck had a question, and we're going back to the shoreline. Is it cheaper to pay the fine afterwards than do the permits for shoreline zoning? I have no idea what he's referring to, of course. I mean, what that means. So is it or isn't it?
It depends, but normally it's not going to be sufficient, because in addition to the fine, typically they bring either a cease and desist or what's called an injunction, where they have the court require you. So let's just say you built an illegal deck that was too close to the lake and you didn't get a permit for it. So his question is, well, can't I just pay the fine? No, you can't. Typically, they're going to also ask the court to require you to remove that deck.
All right, hold on. First of all, what is an illegal deck? Or do you mean the deck was placed on a spot that was, because I've never heard of an illegal deck. Does it grow pot or something, or?
Maybe, perhaps.
Or you're saying that it's
not
just the structure, like you add a deck on and it's not a part of the shoreline zoning, right? Because you can't have a deck on this property, or it's too close to the shore. I'm assuming that's what that means. Shoreline zoning now is just it's too close, or it's not on a level, whatever. So you have your own property, you build a deck, and they say, no, you can't do that. So correct. That's what he's asking. So you just pay the fine? Or what do you have to remove the? So in that scenario, does that person have to remove the deck?
Oftentimes, the zoning folks will not only issue you a fine, and the way they issue the fines is it's an everyday fine. So it's $300 per day during the violation, or whatever the fine amount might be.
Sure.
Plus, if you fight them, they're going to ask the court to order you to remove the deck. So it's not just pay the fine; it is also remove the deck.
So this is on the owner of the a house or a business. I'm assuming you could put a deck on a business as well. So if it was zoned for that, but whatever the structure is, It's up to the owner of that to know what the rules are. Is that it? Because it sounds like this could be really expensive. Not only all those fines, and I'm assuming there'd be a little grace period there. Like, okay, I didn't know, but holy cow, I just spent like $7,000 on this deck or whatever a deck costs. Now I got to spend another couple just to remove it. Jeepers, that's kind of a man. That's a tough one because if it's violating a zoning thing, then you don't want to do that. But at the same time, I can't recoup $10,000.
Yeah. No, it's the things that I've seen and over the years and the cases that I've read, it's incredible, and it's why on balance. So you could come up with theoretical reasons why there are some good things that are done in a zoning ordinance, but on balance, I think we are to the place where we have these 125 page ordinances that are just doing more harm than good.
Sure. Are there some? So these zoning things sound a lot like when I have. There we go. Dave Wilson. We always have to mention his name on the show. I don't know why that started. It just did. And then we have a little triangle ding that we always have to do. This is when he was on a couple years ago. We were talking about city ordinances. So this zoning stuff sounds like city ordinances. That if enough, and I think he had said that a lot of these ordinances really kind of start from a complaint. That's really what it's complaint driven. Someone's upset about something. Fine, we'll put it in an ordinance. So this kind of sounds like an ordinance to me, because at least I understand ordinances. So let me ask you, because I think I asked Dave when he was on. So if like the city ordinance has 3 inches for grass, like you have to mow your grass, and I don't know. I know a lot of cities have these, maybe 3 inches, let's say 5 inches. It can't be over 5 inches or you can get a ticket. Well, it's easily correctable. You go out and say, mow your grass. But I think I asked Dave, do you really, go with the tape measure and do? He goes, it's got to be pretty egregious, right? I mean, because we're not ordinance cops. We have like real jobs to do. So unless it's like abandoned building and then it's like, okay, it's like a foot tall, we got to get something done. But now what happens if it goes from 5 inches down to all of a sudden there's an ordinance that's 4 inches? So do people get grandfathered in, or is it, well, now, jeepers, I used to do it every single week at this time, and now I have to do... Is there like a grandfathering in thing when these things change, when zoning, when Wisconsin or a county or a city, they change a policy or a zoning, whatever it's called, is there a grandfathering in type thing or nope? And then how do they know? Think of that. Does this go out in like letters to people that, by the way, what you thought you knew isn't updated anymore? That's not true anymore. There's a new one.
Yes and no. So oftentimes ordinances do have grandfathering both as to use and structure. It's called non-conforming. So it was legal when I built it and was using it, and you passed an ordinance that said now it's too close to the lake, for example. That's the classic example in shoreland zoning is your cabin is at 20 feet away from the lake, and now we have a 75-foot setback from the lake. Your cabin is non-conforming. In fact, when I was in the legislature, because I was so irritated with what zoning administrators were doing to people with their non-conforming structures, we put some protections in state law that they couldn't do some of these things. And it was incredibly divisive at the time that we passed it. We'd had people saying, oh, you're going to ruin all the lakes. And of course, it's nonsense. Just look at the lakes aren't ruined. They're the same as they were. Oh, you're going to have more runoff. No, you're not. It's just a bunch of baloney, if you ask me. And we've let ourselves get sucked into this idea that we should allow bureaucrats to control what we do on our own property. And we should figure out a way to extricate ourselves from it. In fact, again, if I was king for a day, or if I was a judge on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, I believe that many of the ordinances that are out there are actually violate our constitutional rights. And I would be far more protective of people's property rights from a constitutional perspective than courts have historically been. I believe the courts have taken a swing and a miss when it comes to property rights, and they need to reevaluate their property rights jurisprudence to protect people's constitutional rights more than they have in the past. We have given bureaucrats far, far too much power, in my opinion.
So what I'm hearing is there may be a possible run for Supreme Court from you.
No, never.
That's what I just heard. That's.
But when you have Dan Kelly, really tell him that we need to have some property rights protected by judges, and maybe you'll persuade him, or maybe you'll persuade Judge Doro of that, and whichever wins can lead the charge to protect property rights for Wisconsinites.
All right, last question about that. We spent a lot of time on this, but I'm so fascinated by all of this.
You're the only one. I can't see, but you
What?
probably have 0 viewers at this point.
Probably, I don't know. I can't see it either. I've turned that off because I don't want to know. Because most people watch it afterwards anyway. But still, oh shoot, what was I going to ask? Oh, so originally this question started because I was asking common calls that you get. So give me a common. What is the most frequent resolution to these when you get calls about the zoning and all that? How does that process work? You just, hey man, I don't know why you're calling me. Tear down your deck or whatever that scenario is. How do these usually end up? Like agreed upon? Is there like a wiggle room? You work with a zoning person, administrator, or whatever their title is, and you kind of work with them. I think you just froze. Oh, there you're back.
Yeah, sorry. So I think I understood the question.
Yeah.
It's fact intensive. It depends on what happened and when it happened on the advice that I will give. I will say I've been doing it long enough now that I know most of the zoning administrators and corporation counsel around and am able to, in many cases, work something out that's reasonable and will make sense and get people to a place where they can kind of live with it. Sometimes it requires us to go through a variance process. Sometimes it requires a slight modification. Sometimes it requires taking some medicine and requiring that once this the useful life of this particular structure is done, then it will go away. And sometimes it's just a full out court process with trials and briefing, and you rely on the judges. And by the way, another one of these people that we pay no attention to during election time are the judges that we elect and the district attorneys that we elect. Incredibly important for our lives. We should, in my opinion, stop paying so much attention to who the president is and pay more attention to who's your county judge, who's your DA, who's your, Wisconsin Supreme Court justice, who's your state representative. These people, these county board representatives and town board and village and city have far, far, far more influence on your day-to-day life than whoever the president is.
100% agree. I have a few more questions I've written down here. Can you hang with us we're a little over a time already. Can you hang for another 10? 10 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. We'll be back in 15 seconds after a word from Spooner Health.
In our patient satisfaction surveys and in conversations with patients, they appreciate the fact that staff got to know them. Staff really took their preferences into account, and they just feel grateful that they are being cared for as a person.
To learn more about our services, visit spoonerhealth.com.
So is this something... I said the last question about the zoning thing was my last one, which clearly is not now. Is this the part of the job that you like? Being a lawyer. Do you like being a lawyer? And if so, is this one of the areas that you love? Like, I can totally sink my teeth into this stuff, man. Or is it, I hate these.
No, it's frustrating. It's very, very frustrating. It drives me crazy to have to be involved in these. It's just one of those places where I have developed a fair amount of experience. And so I take these on. And when I do, I try to do the best job that I can for the client, of course. But it is personally frustrating for me to see what property owners, homeowners, business owners have to go through in order to kiss the ring of the zoning bureaucracy. And it just drives me up a wall sometimes. And, it's not that I think people should just ignore or, not pay attention to the law. To the contrary, I think we should follow the law. But I think that when it comes to something like this, when you're talking about 120-page ordinance that is so easily, somebody can foot fault so easily, that there needs to be a recognition of that by the folks that are working in these agencies, and to try to work with people and to provide customer service to people, as opposed to what I see too often is a willingness to really want to butt heads and assert your authority. And it just doesn't make sense.
And who would want to move to that town, city, or a county? Who would want to move to that place? I'm just saying, we want to, especially in north of Wisconsin. Let's bring people in, not find reasons to, make them say, screw this, I'm selling, I'm leaving. Mm-hmm. But now I'm sure I'm just oversimplifying it. You have been... Well, first let me ask you this. What would you define as a successful life for you, for Adam Jarchow? You can look back and go, I was successful. What would that be?
Oh, I feel blessed every day. I mean, having kids and a wife for over 20 years and, being able to pay my mortgage and live in a little old farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, that feels pretty successful to me. I think many people would look at that life and say, I don't want to live in that little old house and I'd like to live in a city and go to the theater and do something different. And so my definition of success is pretty simple.
And do you think you've been successful up till now? You look at it right now and say, I'm successful
I
because
don't
of
know
those
about
reasons?
successful, but I'm certainly very happy with my life. I don't wake up in the morning and feel like unhappy or depressed.
Sure.
I wake up most mornings and feel incredibly blessed to have the opportunity to go wake my kids up and get them ready for school and then go to a job and make a living. And mostly it sounds so weird to say because we just don't say this very often anymore. I mostly feel blessed that I live in America right now. If you ever watch any of these old shows that are on TV that people sort of pay attention to now, there's a show like a prequel to Yellowstone on Paramount. I think it's called 1923. And or if read any history about settling the West, it took months to travel to
Yeah, I
like
know.
Montana,
I know.
right?
We got it pretty
And
good.
you'd probably get killed. Today, I just go down to the airport, buy a ticket, and get on a plane, and I'm in Montana. And if I want to fly back the same day, I do it, and it's literally zero risk. It's crazy how lucky we are, how blessed we are to live in this country, and for all of the complaining that I might do about the zoning administrator or this or that, it's still a pretty great country to live in and a pretty great life we get to lead.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of poverty in this world, and I don't want to, obviously I'm not referring to that. There is. People don't have water, people don't have food. But in terms of America, for the overwhelming majority, at least everybody I know, and maybe it's just because I just basically live in Northwest Wisconsin, everyone's doing okay. And I think a lot of that complaining comes into, and I don't blame social media because, I mean, that's certainly a part of it, but that's such an easy thing to say. Social media is just ruining everything. I don't know about that. Maybe a little bit, but not that much. I honestly just think we have way too much time and way too much money on our hands. And I know that sounds so contradictory to a lot of things that, people don't have a ton of money. There was that report that came out like 60% of people making $150,000 are living paycheck to paycheck. Well, and that's terrible. Come on. Your cost of living goes up just as fast as, as soon as you get a pay raise, then all of a sudden you want something nicer and nicer. And I don't know if it's necessarily the economy that's actually destroying or making you barely get by. I kind of feel like you were kind of barely getting by before and you were just frivolously spending on a lot of things. Of course, I'm sensitive to the fact that a lot of people or some people aren't in that situation. But seriously, we got it pretty good. And what we spend our money on is ridiculous. Those streaming services, for crying out loud. I can't afford them anymore. They used to be super cheap, but I don't know. I just feel as though even though it's been wonderful to live in this world as it is today, and I 100% agree with you, this is the best time to live in America is today. But at the same time, I feel like we're pretty spoiled. And I think that's hurting us just a little bit. Because we don't do what you just said, to stop and go, you know what? Life's actually pretty good.
It is, and I think a lot of the sort of whining that we hear is people that, feel, in my opinion, overly entitled. You know what? Wake up, go to work. There's a job out there. Yeah, you might not love that job. Too bad, so sad. Suck it up, go to work, do your job, get a paycheck. And by the way, let's just say that you start at one of these jobs that people kind of call entry level, the jobs that maybe you had in high school as a cashier or what have you. You know how quickly you can move up in those jobs? If you start today as an 18-year-old at Quick Trip as a cashier, how long do you think, if you're a hard worker, you show up every day, you're respectful, you provide good customer service, how long until you're the manager of that store?
That's right.
How long will that take? Not very long.
You said at the beginning you wanted to learn something about me, so I've got something for you.
All right.
I'm a perfect example of that. When I graduated high school, I was living in Eau Claire. I was working in Menominee at the Walmart Distribution Center because that's where my brother worked, his wife worked, and that's actually where I met my first wife. So I worked there, and I became I got promoted just because really I worked hard because that's how I was taught. I mean, I didn't know any other way to do it than just work hard. Plus, I enjoyed it, just unloading semis and doing stuff, whatever. And anytime they said, hey, is there something you want to do? Or we have an opportunity for this, 12-hour days on weekend shifts. Yeah, I'll do that. Whatever, I didn't care. but it looked kind of nice on a resume. A year later, I moved to the Twin Cities, actually up by Forest Lake, and my wife at the time was running a movie theater. That's why we moved over there, and I'm like, well, I need a job. So I went to White Bear Lake, and I got a job at Blockbuster Video, working part-time, only because back then, before streaming services and cell phones, no smartphones or anything, I got 5 free movie rentals a week. I'm like, well, this is an area I don't know, so I'm just really getting a job for 5 free movie rentals a week. Well, within a year, I had been promoted to not only moved to full-time, but also promoted to a supervisor, also promoted to an assistant manager level 1, and then assistant manager level 2. 2 months after that, I'm running my own business. I was running a multi-million-dollar Blockbuster store, and I'm 20 years old. Mm-hmm. I just got a job because I needed money and I wanted some free movie rentals, but, worked hard, and that worked out. Now, that led to running another store, and then running a Papa Murphy's, and then running a car dealership. It all led to, then, where I am now. I learned everything from that, but it was just like you said. I just worked hard, and I started just at a job that paid me. And I really kind of just went for whatever I wanted, whether it was like at Walmart, it was just because of the money. It's like $13 an hour back then, which is a lot, or maybe it's 11. Just wanted, money to live. And then Blockbuster just for movie rentals. And next thing you know, I think at the time, man, back then that was pretty good. I think I was getting like $35,000 a year on salary. And that was, I don't know, 23 years ago. That's not bad for a 20-year-old.
Right. For sure.
Years. So yeah, I agree. But nobody wants to do that.
And now
anymore.
look at you. Yeah, now look at you. You wear a hoodie to work.
Right. I do it. America, I tell you. I love it. All right, man. Hey, what do you have thanks for coming on, by the way. And what do you have coming up this week?
Oh, I don't know. I just look at my calendar in the morning and figure out which stuff I have to do. I suspect I will go be a lawyer. You know what? I think maybe tonight I'll take the kids skiing after work and after school. I don't think they have sports tonight, so we'll head over to Trollhagen and do a little skiing.
Do you snowboard?
Ski. Yeah, I ski.
Oh, I was just asking. But have you ever boarded?
Nah, not really. That kind of started after, believe it, I'm old. So it kind of came in after I was done with high school when people kind of start hitting the snowboards. I'd kind of like to learn. I love to wakeboard in the summer behind the boat. And so it'd be pretty fun. But my kids have said, nah, Dad, we still want to try skiing. So until they're ready to learn how to snowboard, I think I'm going to be a skier. Skiing
is fun. How much is what do they call that? Hill pass? No, like a ticket. What is it called? You put something on your when you go, if you want to go skiing, how much does it cost is what I'm asking.
Yeah, we have a family annual pass, so I actually don't know what it is for every, like a lift ticket per day. I'm not sure
what it is,
a
lift ticket. I'd like to go skiing again.
The last couple of years, we've bought a family annual pass there, and it's not overly expensive for how much we use it, actually.
Very nice. Maybe I'll start charging industrial safety and Jarchow law a little bit more in their advertising, and then I can get an annual pass and then take the kids.
There you go. That sounds like a good plan.
All right, cool. And I will have Judge Dora on tomorrow, and then I think Tom Tiffany on Thursday, and I think I'll be seeing you later this week as well for our dinner. So, hey, man, thanks so much for coming on.
All right, brother. Have a good day.
You got it. Whoopsie, wrong side. For Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald, I'm Ben Dryden, and you've been watching Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy, presented by Professional Exteriors and Interiors. With nearly 20 years of experience, this locally owned and operated business provides quality work both on the outside and on the inside of your home or business. So give Brian a call today, 715-520-2271. Special thank you to a friend of the show, businessman and attorney Adam Jarchow, for jumping on to fill in for Fitzy today. And as I mentioned earlier, I'll be chatting with one of the 2 conservative candidates in the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, Judge Doro, tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m., right here on Facebook and streaming live on our YouTube channel. Thursday, Congressman Tom Tiffany for his monthly Breakfast with Tiffany show. Fitzy and I'll be back next week. Dad. Well, there you go. See, that my dad says hi, I guess.
Come on,
oh,
Sheriff.
Man.
What kind of thing is that to say?
He's killing us today. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week. Have a blessed day.